exercise from the storytelling manual, which is one of the 15 advanced manuals, which is all about telling us a personal story. Deborah's story tonight is called 1963. With 1963, will you please join me in a very warm welcome to Deborah George.
Do you remember 1963? Tonight, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, I'm going to tell you 3 stories that happened in 1963. For those of you who don't know or can't remember, 1963 was the big freeze. Better get my coat on. I was 7 years old. My brother Clive was 5 years old. One Saturday morning, we decided we wanted to go out to play. We opened the kitchen door, and the milk had completely frozen in the walls. We walked into the garden, and we wanted to make a snowman. There was something wrong with the garden. We looked. The garden wall, the brick wall, had completely collapsed. It had fallen 5 feet into next door's garden. We ran inside. Dad, you need to have a look at the brick wall. It isn't anymore. He went outside. He looked. He gathered some of the rubble up, and when it was a little bit warmer, he rebuilt that wall. My second story happened on Tuesday, the 15th of January, 1963. There was a knock at the door. We opened the door. In walked Dr. Barber, complete with her case. Dr. Barber was a small lady. She wore Joe 90 type glasses, and she was rather large. You know what I mean? She wasn't interested in us. She immediately went upstairs. Several hours later, a little baby redhead was born. My sister Rachel. The next day, my brother and I, we went to see our little baby sister. And what a cutie she was, and still is. That leads me to my third story. My parents had 3 children under the age of 7½. And they were very concerned. What would they do when it's the long school holidays? They had a brainwave. We'll send the 2 older children to Northern Ireland. They can go and see their Granny Black, and they'll travel as unaccompanied minors on an aeroplane. So they went down to Stockport to the travel agents. They filled out copious forms in triplicates, because that's what you have to do when you send children as unaccompanied minors on a plane. They parted with their money, and they took the tickets. The day in July arrived. This was going to be the biggest adventure of our lives. Dad took us to Ringway Airport, which is just outside Manchester, and we boarded a plane, a Dakota, something like this. My brother, Clive, sat next to the window, and I sat next to him. And a big box of sweets came round. Help yourself, just put some more. Come on. And it was fascinating. We started to climb up into the air, and it was a little bit bumpy, this flight, but it soon settled down. I looked out through the window. I could see a big green island and the blue sea surrounding it, and that was the Isle of Man. And then in no time, we arrived at Aldergrove Airport, which is just outside Belfast. 2 air stewardesses took us off the aircraft, and it was, we then collected our bags, and we had to wait. And they said to us, "Is there anybody you know here? Do you know, can you see your aunt and uncle?" And we waited, and we looked, and we waited. And then all of a sudden, my Uncle Sammy was walking towards us. So we said goodbye to the air stewardesses, we took our cases, put them in the boot. It was early evening, and it was a lovely day. It took about 45 minutes to travel from Aldergrove Airport to my Granny Black's, who lived just outside Drumore. And when we arrived there, she embraced us, and she sat us down, and there was a sweet smell of wheaten bread. I won't pass it round, but this is what wheaten bread looks like. It's whole wheat soda bread. As I said, she sat us down, and she started to fry some herrings in a pan, and they were sizzling away. And the two Siamese cats came into the kitchen, and they were dancing on their toes and meowing, and they wanted a slice of the action. But Granny Black, she was very annoyed with them. "You've had your dinner." And she opened the door and pushed them out. So we sat down to a salad and the wheaten bread and herrings, and it was absolutely delicious. It was soon time for bed, and I remember looking out through the bedroom window, and I could see the sun setting over the mountains of Mourne, and I thought to myself, I've had the biggest adventure of my life. In summary then, I've told you 3 stories. The first story, my brick wall falling down because of the snow and the ice. The second story, the birth of my sister Rachel. And the third story was all about the biggest adventure of my life, Mr. Toastmaster.